next thing we are going to do is finish up our Tea Party edit. So I'm going to go back to my photography class file, and I'm going to go to my saved PSD file. And if I didn't specify that, always make sure when you're working on an image you save it as a PSD, because it will save all of its layers and you can just go back and continue working on it at any time. If you save it as a JPEG, you will lose all of your layers and you'll have to start over from wherever you're at. You can still work on it, but you can't go back, you can't change anything, and so we always want to save it as a PSD file. So okay, so the last thing we did was we changed the color of the sky, which looks good, but I want to make some more changes. So I want to teach you how to use the brightness and contrast adjustment. I like to use this because it really adds pop to things. And if you add some brightness to it, it really makes them stand out against the background. So I don't use much with the contrast in Photoshop, but you definitely can. Like if your image is too sharp and you need to, or too contrasty, I should say, you can pull this down and you can soften it out a little bit. I'm okay with where the contrast is, so I'm going to reset my settings down here with this little arrow. I'm going to pop my brightness up a little bit, and then I'm going to take this white layer and I'm going to invert it to make it black. So that means that the adjustment I just made will be hidden. So on a Mac, it's Command-I, and on a PC, you can right-click this, and you should be able to go down to Invert Layer. So now you can see, you can't see the brightness that I adjusted at all. So I'm going to take my foreground colors, and right now it's black. So if I painted black on black, nothing's going to happen. And make sure that this layer is clicked. I'm going to switch it to white. I'm going to make sure my opacity and my flow are at 100%. You can always bring that down if you don't want to bring so much of that brightness forward. And then I'm going to run this over her, and I'm going to brighten her up. I'm going to make her pop just a little bit. Move over the table, and over the cupcakes, and definitely over the bear. And that's not too bad. I'm going to change back to black because I want to erase some of this off down here because I don't like how fake it looks. And I'm going to move my opacity down to about 30%. I'm going to change this back to white, and I'm going to go over it just one more time. So it's going to let a little bit pop out, but not quite as much. So it's a more natural fade. And then I'm going to put my opacity back to 100%. And I'm going to erase some of this off of here. And that looks pretty good. I like that a little bit. So the next thing I'm going to do is I need to soften and blend this background up a little bit. Since we're working with masks, I'm just going to show you how to mask the softness off of our people when we get done. If I was being very precise, I would use the magic or the quick selection tool, and I would select them to make sure that when I do that, nothing is taken, or nothing goes on my people. Hang on just a second. Okay, so to do this, we're going to go down here and we're going to create a new layer. And I am going to use my color sampler tool. And I'm going to click one of these darker colors right here. Maybe even this brown. Let's see, over here we have a more purpley hue. So we'll start with probably this darker purple right here. And I'm going to go back to my brush, and I'm going to put my flow all the way down, and I'm going to make my brush a little bigger, maybe like 250. And make sure that you're on a soft brush, not a hard brush. I might even bring my hardness down a smidge. And I'm going to run over all this stuff. I'm just really going to blend it all together. Even the trees. I want it to have that real soft, painty look. Maybe even a little of the horizon. And I'm going to run over her too, because otherwise I'll have lines and it'll look weird, and I'll teach you how to remove that from her. I'm just going to keep on going. And then you can see we have this line right here, and it looks weird, so I'm going to make my brush bigger, maybe an 800. And I'm going to run this through the sky too. I'm going to darken everything down. And like I said, if we took this image at the appropriate time and it was sunset and or twilight hours, it would be a lot easier to do this. You wouldn't have this issue with this horizon line being so bright and things like that. But we're working with the hour we took the image, so we're going to do the best we can. We're just going to keep blending till it looks fairly decent. And like I said, if I was giving this to a client, I would be super picky. But since I'm just teaching you, that'll be okay. We'll leave it at that. If I didn't like how dark this was, I would go over here to the opacity and I could move it down. And the more I move it down, you can see the more of the image it brings forward. So it's making this layer more see-through is what it's doing. So I'm going to put it at like 70%. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create another layer. I'm going to do this, oh wait, oops, we're going to backtrack, just kidding. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a layer mask. So I'm going to come down here to the square with the dot, layer mask. I'm going to make sure I'm painting black because I want to erase all of this off her in the bear. I got to bring my flow back up and my hardness because I really want to kind of stay in the lines. I'm going to erase this off of her. And off of her cupcake. Off of these. Off of the bear. And then I'm going to go down here to my magnifying glass and I'm going to get in a little closer so I can refine this a little bit. Go back to your brush, switch your foreground color to white, bring your opacity down so that you don't have so much coming through. I'm going to bring a little bit of this back because I don't want these white lines around her. And I really don't like how harsh that line is either. I'm going to go around, just make it look more natural. Same with all these areas. Just kind of blending this all in. Especially right here, and then this is a mess, so later we'll fix this. I'll teach you how to blend this and make that look more realistic and blend into the rest of the picture. Alright, so that's fairly decent. What do we got going on with her crown right here? I'm going to put my opacity back up to 100%. I'm going to erase a little more off her crown. I'm going to make this smaller so I'm more inside the lines. even smaller. For forehead. Okay, there we go. That works. And that'll do. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new layer again. We're going to keep that same dark purple. Actually, you know what? Let's click that dark purple and let's do like an orangey pinky color, like that. Okay, and then we are going to go down here and we're going to put this to soft light. These are blending modes for your layers. So you can change any layer to one of these blending modes and it'll completely change the look of your layer. So like, if we change this to darken, you can see it darkened the sky. So you can play around with these. It really changes an image a lot. So we're going to put it to soft light. So the light that's coming off my brush now is going to be a completely different kind of light. It's going to be more ethereal and a little more like contrasty and colorful. Let's see. But in a soft way. And if you did this with hard light, it would give you a completely different color. So you can see how much different that is. It's not just the purpley painted color. It kind of makes it look like it's more whimsical. And I'm going to do the edges too because I really want this all to blend. And we'll blend this down here even more in a second. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create a layer mask. Make sure my foreground, make sure this is selected. Make sure my foreground's black. I'm going to make my brush smaller. I'm going to make sure the flow is back to 100%, and I'm going to erase all this off her. With this one, you won't have to be quite as precise because it's soft light, so it didn't go on 100% like our purple did. Okay, that looks pretty good. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to hit Command Option Shift E. Now I have my new layer. I'm going to blend all of this in at the bottom. I don't like how different the color is from the bottom to the top. So, whoa! I'm going to bring all of our layers back. So what I want to do is I want to go right here to my color and color balance. And I'm going to click it. And I'm going to put some magenta into the bottom. And right now it's also affecting the top, but I'm going to mask it off so that it doesn't later. And maybe some blue. And a little red. Good. And then I'm going to take my layer mask. I'm going to make sure this is clicked. This is black, so it will erase. And I'm going to erase this off the sky and see what happens. See if I get a more blended color look. I'm not as, that's a little more blended than it was before, so. You can apply even more magenta or whatever. So you can see this is affecting the skin tones a lot. That's okay, we can go back and fix this later. Or you could click your layer mask, bring your opacity down to like 30%. Make your brush smaller. Just run this over her skin to bring some of it back. And it's okay if he's, if you wanted him to pop and stand out, you might erase some off him. So, let me go ahead and take some of that off. Alright, that looks pretty good. So the next thing I want to do is I want to make the sky glow. So to do that, I am going to create a new layer, Command Alt Shift E. And I am going to pick a yellowy whitey color. Even white will work, but we'll go with that. We'll see how that looks. I'm going to create a gradient for that effect. So I'm going to go to layer. I'm going to go to new fill layer, and you can do a solid color, which will affect the entire image. You can do a gradient, which will affect half, or you can do a pattern. I'm going to do a gradient. I'm going to hit OK. And now you see we have this gradient here. So you have options. This is just linear, which means it covers this bottom half. We can do radial. We can do an angle. We can do a reflection, reflected, which is a middle. You can do diamond, which is also really cool. But for this image, we're going to do radial. So we're just going to put it right in the center. I'm going to change my angle a little so that it brightens up a little more. I might even make it a little bigger. I'm going to bring it more to the top of the screen. And then I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to change I'm going to play with this and I'm going to see which one do I like. So this is soft light. That softens it too much. Let's overlay. No, it's not as ethereal as I want it to be. That's hard light. That's kind of nice. Screen. That's more what I'm looking for. Like a bright sunlight kind of feeling coming down onto this picture. So I'm gonna put it on screen is what I'm gonna do. And then to adjust this, you have to click it and open it again. So I'm gonna move this a little. And ideally, I would want this image over here a little bit, but it's okay. We're gonna center this over them anyways. And that looks fairly good. I might click the layer mask, and my opacity is already at 30, so I might run this over her so it brings her back a little bit. A little over the bear, a little over the food. That'll work. I like that pretty good. And then I'm gonna open a brightness and contrast layer, and I'm gonna brighten this up a smidge. I'm gonna invert it, Command I, or right clicking on a PC. And then I'm gonna make my foreground color white. I'm gonna keep this at 30. I'm gonna put my brush at about 600, and I'm just going to try and bring out that brightness right here in the middle and on the table. To really brighten this up a little bit. And that's pretty good. So that's pretty much how I did the other image. There was some other things that I applied as far as adjusting the skin and things like that, or just, you know, making the skin more even, which I'm not going to get into in this. We'll get into it next week. I just wanted you to see how to apply this fairy tale effect to your photo. The last thing I want to do is I want to kind of change the texture of this bear and make him look more cartoony. So I'm going to make a new layer, Command Option Shift E. And I'm going to go to my filter, and I'm going to go to Filter Gallery. So this is a really cool place where you can make all these different effects to your image. It's a little magnified. So you can see right now it's on the watercolor, which is what I also used in the other image, and you can see how cool it makes this bear look. And it makes this whole painting, or this whole picture, look like a painting. There's underwater painting. You can see the effect that it has. And it kind of blurs it out. And sponge painting. And what else? Neon glow. That's a little crazy. Your dry brush. And you could see all the different effects that these have. So I'm going to go back to watercolor because I liked the way it made my bear look. I'm going to click OK. and then I'll make a layer mask. Command I, I'm going to invert it, and I'm going to do the same thing I did. I'm just, by making it inverted, it hides all of that. So I'm only going to apply that effect to certain areas of the image. So I'm going to bring it forward on the bear. I'm going to make him look kind of cartoony. And you can see it just kind of enhances him and makes him, well, it might be kind of cool on the crown. Let's see what it looks like on the crown. Ah, kind of neat. Maybe even on these cupcakes a smidge. I like the way it darkens them up. So you could see the different effects it has. And then I might go in and open a saturation and vibrance. I might bring up my vibrance a little bit and my saturation. And then same thing, invert it. Right click if you're on a PC, and it'll have an invert option. And I'm going to bring up the saturation right here on my cupcakes, my teacup, and my bear. I'm going to make him look real golden pretty. Maybe her dress a little bit. And that's not too bad. The only other thing I would want to fix is all these bright spots, because they look fake and you can tell that I Photoshop worked it. So I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to use my magnifying glass to come in real close here. And if you were being real precise with your editing, you wouldn't have to do this. But because I was moving quickly to show you things, I do. So I need to bring my opacity back up. I need to bring my flow down. I need to make a small enough brush to fit in between here. So, and then with my flow at 1%, I have lots of control over this. So I'm just going to apply it in there to brighten, to bring this down so it looks more. And what I did was I color sampled this. It gave me this goldeny color, and that's what I'm applying to here. Maybe to the edge of the chair just a smidge. And down here at the bottom especially. And I might have to color sample again for down here because it's completely different. So I might color sample here instead. And if that's still not working, we could always use our clone stamp tool and come in and sample from here and fix in here. But if you're real precise, color sample, fill in, you shouldn't have to do too much of this. It really just depends on how much time you want to take on your masking. This image could take me an hour if I was doing it for a client, just because of how all those little things, being precise and whatnot. So take as much time with it as you want. The last thing you could do is create one more layer, sample from down here, maybe like a golden tone. Your flow's already at 100%. Bring it up to 800 and blend all this too. We kept our opacity normal because we just want that painted, blended look. I'm not trying to brighten it up like I was with the soft light. And you can see it makes it real ethereal down here as well. All right, and then to save this, we would save it as a Photoshop. So save as. We're in the saving menu. I want on format down here. I want it saved as a Photoshop. If I'm ready to post it in the group, well, let's do this. Let's save it as a Photoshop first so that we can save all of our layers and we have it. So we're going to save it. It's going to ask me if I want to replace the one that already exists, and I do because I just added to it. I'm going to click OK. And that's great. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save as. Oh, it's telling me it's still saving, so it's not going to let me. I'm going to save as. Still doing it. Wait a second. Let's try again. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save this as a copy. And because I want to post it in the group, I'm going to save it as a JPEG. And I'm going to hit save. And it's going to give me the option, image quality option. I always save mine as 12 because I like to print them. The smaller you go, the less quality you're going to have. So when you go to print it, you're not going to be able to blow it up big, put it on a canvas, anything like that. So when you're working with images like this, always try to save them as the maximum quality you can. And now we have it as a JPEG. All right, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.